Hello and welcome to Piano Shack with me, Woody. Recently then, I had the privilege and honour of attending the secret launch event for the new Yamaha Genos 2 in Berlin. I had the pleasure of hanging out and interacting with the designers and the engineers and the product managers of this fantastic new workstation keyboard. And today I'll share you some of the inside info that I learned about all of the new features on the Genos 2. So my Genos has yet to arrive, so this video will be a more talk format, but I can share with you all the inside info that I gleaned from the Yamaha crew. And don't worry, as soon as my Genos arrives in a week or two, I'll do a new video with demonstrations of all of these new features. At a first casual glance, the screen might seem unchanged, but Yamaha tell me that it's a completely new LCD panel. They've done a lot of work to reduce the glare and make the screen more viewable, and although it's not a tilty flippy screen, they have angled it more. 5 degrees more tilt is what I remember one of the engineers telling me. I'm more used to the screens on the Montage, the Modi X and the flagship PSRs, so having the Genos screen in front of me, it looked absolutely massive and it was a pleasure to use. One of the big killer new features is the dynamics control. Now, this is assigned to a knob in the live control section, and you can turn this and it will just turn down the dynamics of the entire band, okay, all at once. And what it's actually doing is not reducing the volume, but it's adjusting the velocity. So as you turn it down, you get a more soft velocity on the drums, the bass, and all the other instruments, which sounded actually very nice in the demos. And then as you get to a more intense part of the song, you just turn the dial and you can crank it all the way up to max and everything in between for the real hard velocity strikes. Yeah, a very nice feature. The Genos 2 has a completely new set of drum samples, and what they've done is recorded the drums close mic'd and with room mics in the back of the room, and then there's a control, a dedicated control, again in the live knob section, where you can adjust the balance between the room mics and the close mics to get exactly the kind of ambience you want on the drum kits. And again, it did sound awesome. Don't be deceived, this is not just adding reverb to the drum sounds, it's actually adjusting the balance of the microphones in the room. Perhaps this is the hugest feature of all. As you know, I like the DX7, and many of my followers here on the channel are fans of the Yamaha DX7 and the FM sound engine as well. In fact, some of my most popular videos have featured the legendary DX7 from 1983. And now that sound engine is available on the Genos 2, which is pretty amazing. So I guess it's based on the FMX engine on the Yamaha Modi X and the flagship Montage, but Yamaha didn't provide any details. But yes, now you have all of those fabulous FM sounds on board. Now, they are non-editable. You can't get in there and tweak the algorithms and so on, but there is a basic filter control that you didn't get on the original and some basic envelope shaping controls as well. But basically, it's a preset machine. But yeah, who doesn't love playing those FM DX7 sounds? They are so expressive, especially when you're playing the piano sounds. Just all the levels of dynamics you get, basically 127 steps of velocity sensitivity are available to you. Extremely, yeah, in a nutshell, that just makes them extremely enjoyable and rewarding and satisfying to play. I look forward to checking that out. Another thing they tell me is that they are using the FM sound engine in many of the styles now, replacing the sampled sounds with FM sounds to improve the polyphony. Apparently on the older Genos model, they were pretty much reaching the limit of what the sound engine could handle in terms of polyphony. If you don't know, that means how many notes you can play at the same time. Don't quote me on this, but I think by adding the FM sound engine, it effectively doubles the polyphony that's available. The Genos has a live control section with 6 knobs and 9 faders on the new instrument, and this is inherited from the Montage and the Yamaha YC and CP. We now get LED collars around the knobs and LED strips on the side of each fader. Now this is really nice because when you change registrations or programs or sounds, you can immediately see what values are dialed in on the LED strips and collars, even if the actual physical positions of the faders and the knobs don't quite line up. It's a really helpful feature, I think. Yamaha mentioned 3 new pianos that they were very proud of. There's a felt piano, which is like a soft piano. You put felt in between the hammers and the strings, and this gives you that very popular cinematic TV soundtrack kind of sound, and also it's a sound I hear a lot in EDM and contemporary modern house music. So that's really nice to have the felt piano. There's also a character grand, which sounds more like the upright or the grand piano that you might have in your living room, slightly detuned. It sounded awesome when Martin was playing it on his demonstration. And then I believe there's a new upright piano as well, but don't quite remember the details about that, but that's something we'll have to explore when I get my Genos. And I don't think these are inherited from the CP or the YC. They sounded to me like completely new piano samples, but they were very nice. The representatives didn't mention any upgrades to the electric piano sounds, so I don't think we can expect any improvements in the Wurlitzer or the Rhodes. But remember, now we have the FM sound engine, so those 80s E-pianos are going to be so much better than the old samples that we got on the Genos 1. Yamaha were very proud to show off and demonstrate a brand new nylon classical guitar sample using the super articulation voicing technology. Apparently a lot more expressive and controllable and playable than the version that they had before, even though that sounded pretty good to my ears. But yeah, sounded wonderful. They've also gone and sampled a completely new brass section, a symphonic brass, the horn section of an orchestra, and that sounded really nice in the demos too for more soundtracky, cinematic stuff. Very expressive when Martin was playing it. You could get the real soft, mellow sound, and then as you struck it harder, you got the real pow of the orchestra. Yeah, again, pretty awesome. The sound engineers went all the way to Bulgaria to sample the Sofia Symphonic Orchestra's string section. This was again a highlight of the demo and sounded really nice. I don't quite remember so much of the details, but there was a joke why they went down to Sofia, because it was a bit cheaper than recording the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra, but that was just a joke. Again, they sounded awesome, and I've seen people complaining perhaps a little bit about the variety of string sounds on the Genos 1, so this I'm sure many people will appreciate as a huge improvement. The original Genos had over 500 sounds, 550 or something, but the new one, well, if I could do the maths I could work it out, but the new one has 215 new styles for a total of 800 styles, which is just astonishing. Furthermore, the product team told me that they've reworked all of the existing styles as well, and they've really focused on getting the balance right between the different instrument parts, and also the balance between the lead parts that you play with your right hand and the accompaniment is something they've tweaked. Those one-touch settings for all of the styles, and they've also been reworking them to add more of the FM engine sounds to replace some of the sampled sounds. I assume that's more in the electronic dance categories to make it sound a little bit more modern. Another highlight feature that they were very proud to demonstrate was the new reverb algorithm. Now, Yamaha, as you may know, owns Steinberg, who make the Halion software synthesizer and the Cubase digital audio workstation. So what they've done is borrowed the very high-end reverb from those products. I don't remember the name the product name, but they've lifted that, put it into the Genos, and we got some demonstrations of that together with the horns and the piano, I think. And yeah, of course, as you would expect, it sounded really nice. Now, the Genos 1, and this is a little bit confusing to me, the Genos 1 had this Revo drum technology. So it was using samples, but if you hit the snare drum several times, it would not play the exact same sample over and over again. You'd have this round robin technology. So they sampled the snare drum, say 20 times, and then every time you played the snare drum, or the style would play the snare drum, you'd get a slightly different variation of the sound, exactly like you would get on a real drum kit. And they did this for the bass drums, the cymbals, the toms, and everything. And that technology they call Revo Drums. Now, Revo Drums, confusingly, is no longer available on the Genos 2, if I understand correctly, but they are still using that kind of technology. They're just choosing to call it something else, and I don't remember the name. So don't be concerned if Revo Drums seems to be missing from the Genos 2. Well, that's just because they changed the name of it, but the technology is still the same and even much improved. They visited some famous recording studios in London and in Germany, if I recall correctly, and have created completely new drum samples of modern and vintage drum kits, and they sounded awesome. One of the most striking things when you hear the Genos 2, and indeed the Genos 1 in action, is just the crispness and the punchiness of those drum sounds. It's truly spectacular and a joy to play along with. It really is. It sounds like I'm gushing, I know, but the drums are just incredible. And of course you have the control over the dynamics now, so you can soften down the hits if you want to. Adjust the room ambience. Yeah, you can just dial in the drum sounds you want, and all the fills and the patterns are just spectacular. Okay, this is a huge feature for me. The Genos 2 now has just a standard HDMI output, which is fantastic. If you're hard of sight, you can connect it up to a larger monitor. I've done those kind of projects with my old PSR, but that was using outdated VGA technology. Now we have HDMI. Another thing that makes it great for me as a content creator on YouTube is that I can feed that HDMI output into my screen capture software and show you on the videos exactly what we're seeing on the screen in crisp HD quality without me having to try and film the screen of the keyboard, which always looks horrible. So hugely grateful for that. I'm not sure how it worked on the original Genos, but I suspect you needed to use some kind of USB to HDMI adapter, and that was just a complete mess. Another feature that I will really appreciate is the chord looper is now integrated with the hardware, meaning that you get dedicated buttons to control the chord looper. The chord looper was introduced in the PSR SX900. You could pre-program a set of chord changes and then the keyboard would play them for you, regardless of which style you had selected. Really convenient. The PSR SX900 had physical controls for that were missing on the Genos 1. They did add the chord looper feature to the Genos 1, but it was only available as software buttons on the screen. So now we get them as physical buttons, which I think is a welcome addition. The chord looper is a really handy feature for jamming, practicing, or even performing. So I look forward to trying that out. They've added more of these assignable buttons to make it more compatible, I think, with the layout you got on the Tyros. So I don't know the exact numbers. We'll have to check when the screenshots and the images and the videos are officially available. I'm making this particular video a few days before the official product launch, so I don't have any other information other than what I remember, but they've added more assignable buttons to the left and kept the assignable buttons which were on the right. So now you can choose whichever is your preference, which is nice. Stuff that's the same might be worth discussing. It is the same plastic case. I don't think Yamaha made any changes to that. Only minor changes perhaps to accommodate the new more tilted screen. You get the same kind of architecture, I suppose. It's still the same 4 variations, 3 intros, 3 outros, so nothing revolutionary or groundbreaking there. The same number of one-touch settings, and the basic functionality I think is pretty much unchanged. So as you can perhaps tell, that's the features that stuck in my mind, the most important and interesting to me. But I think Yamaha have done a lot of minor changes all over the place as well that perhaps we won't even notice until we've been using the keyboard for a longer period of time. But I think we can agree perhaps there's no massively new revolutionary feature here. It's just a set of really nice and highly appreciated evolutionary improvements to the original Genos 1. And there's probably good reasons for doing that as well if they were to make a very groundbreaking change to the architecture and how the Genos works, and that would probably upset a lot of the users as well. Upset as many users as it pleases. So we'll have to see if this is enough to make Genos 1 users sell or part exchange their Genos 1s and go for the Genos 2s. But I think the more you use the Genos 2, the more we'll appreciate all of these new enhancements. So I'm sure I've probably forgotten a few of the new features, in which case I'll make a separate video about it. But this is what I remember from attending the 2-day launch event. And don't worry, I'll make a separate video where we demonstrate all of these features. Less talking, more playing. I promise that's coming up soon. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel and you're interested in this keyboard and others like it, it might be a good time to subscribe. And thank you if you already have. Until then, I'll see you next time. Cheerio.